very good afternoon to you. Welcome again to another special edition of Friday Drinks. And today it's special because Ranga, the producer, is actually graduating. He's just finished his law degree and he was supposed to have been capped by the president, but he chose not to go for the celebration. Why not? I mean, it's a big occasion. Well done.
Thank you so much. I wanted to go, obviously. But I could not go. But
you couldn't afford the gown.
I couldn't afford so many things. I couldn't afford so many things. But that does not take away the cheer and the excitement. And there's no better way than doing it with my brothers here.
Okay, fantastic. And I see that the team has actually prepared something special. There's a celebratory braai.
Yeah. You always look for an excuse to celebrate, right? So I'm glad to have delivered that excuse today.
Oh, fantastic. Well,
yeah,
when are you doing your law degree?
I'm not.
What, you continuously just identify as a lawyer?
No, I don't even try to identify as a lawyer. I continue to identify as an analyst.
Maybe you can explain why did you choose to do a law degree?
I'll speak about that, but there's something that I came across with recently. So recently I've been reading a lot of Milton Friedman. Surprise, surprise.
Well done.
And I watched a ton of content. Was a very, very interesting guy. I found him to be very extreme, but was actually quite an entertainer.
Because he's a libertarian. You think libertarians are extremists?
He actually made economics very, not the dismal science that most people think it is. He actually made it quite entertaining. So when I then tracked his family tree, I actually then then learned that his son, he studied, it must have been physics, but he's actually, if you check him out on Google, is actually usually captured as a legal and economic scholar. He didn't study law, he didn't study economics, but because he was staying around his parents who were economists, and for the longest time he
picked it up.
He picked up the habit. He started writing, so he's written more on economics and law, and very little on physics. On physics.
There's this assertion that you're not what you studied, but you are what you have work experience or what you have experience in. So if you are in a particular trade, then you are an economist. So if you've gone through the rigors of economics training, then you become an economist, not necessarily because you studied economics, but it still doesn't get us around to why you actually studied law. Because what you're literally saying is you could have become a lawyer because you never wanted to practice.
I never wanted to practice.
All you wanted to do was to just understand law.
Yes, and I think I achieved that. I would say the time that I spent there managed to teach me, the very basics. I wouldn't claim to know a lot, because I doubt there's anyone who actually walks out of that school feeling like they know a lot that needs to be known about law. But look, it was just an adventure, and one that I was just testing myself. Whether it's the endurance, and just being able to. It's a humbling experience.
Or you were just bored. Midlife crisis.
But there was also something you said that I'm curious about. Though. You said you found Milton Friedman's views to be extreme.
Yeah,
can we just explore one extreme idea?
Okay, we are not. We are.
All right, maybe you can start by just telling us. We'll get into that. Tell us what you're having, because we're having a mazoe and water. Can I please have my mazoe and water? What are you having?
So I'm having another scotch. This one is Talisker Sky. It's I think it's also from the same islands as the whiskey I had last week. It's a smoky one with a bit of sweetness, and it really is a shame. This is when I miss having a guest on the show who actually appreciates these interesting tipples, because I think this is one of the more interesting ones in terms of its mix of flavor. But you know, I'm stuck with the teetotalers.
Yeah, we're having I'm certainly having a refreshing.
You're having Mazoe and he's having
water.
water on ice.
The purest of them all.
Must be really smooth.
And smoky.
But indulge us. I'd love for you to indulge us with.
No. Before we get there, he first needs to tell us why he actually studied law.
No, but he did. He just explained. Unless there's a juicy bit that he left out that you want us to share.
There's no juicy bit. It's just studying, man. Don't make it sound like I had to summon some very special, veins and organs to start that. It's just, learning something new, and I guess midlife crisis, if it means maybe trying to explore. You say, okay, I've done this. Maybe let me try and see if there's something different. So for me, I'd done this finance thing for the longest time. Okay. And I felt like maybe let me try something. It wasn't really about doing the law. I remember we once had a discussion. I don't know whether it was with Rufaro or someone. I wanted something that was more on the arts, humanity kind of side. Like I thought I found myself to be very, rigid, intellectually rigid. Like my mind was just on finance
and numbers.
In numbers.
Okay. So logic and what you wanted was critical thinking.
Exactly. Okay.
So you feel now you're balanced with.
I feel that I'm balanced now, and it's also helping me sort of understand even the numbers a bit differently. That maybe in addition to that logic, there has to be some critical thinking. And at the end of the day, the humanities, I think there's also some bit of analysis and a lot of...
I think that if you get a proper liberal education, then what you're getting is critical thinking. But unfortunately now with, the swamp of socialists and very leftist thinking in the humanities, you don't get that anymore. But I think that ideally, 200 years ago, if you studied, in fact, 200 years ago, it was better to study a humanities degree than to study a STEM degree. And I think that going forward, and I'm out on a limb, I think that with AI, the value of a STEM degree will be somewhat curtailed to a great extent. And what will be required is critical thinking, because I don't think that AI will beat us in as far as critical thinking is concerned. But I think that AI will do so much better as far as logic is concerned. So I think, kudos to you for actually, getting yourself to actually participate and engage yourself in, the humanities.
So I'll add that later on in life, I learned that this thing of getting kids specialized early is not good. True. I actually think a person is better off just having a broader take at life, know as much as possible, even areas that you may think that are not interesting. I think that will make you a better human being.
That was the whole ethos of a liberal education. All the liberal colleges in the US was essentially for somebody to just come in and to take as many courses as possible from both the sciences and the humanities.
Yeah.
But anyway, coming back to Rufaro's point, what is it that you don't like about the Chicago School of Economics? And that's Milton Friedman.
Well, he didn't say he didn't like it. He said he found it to be extreme. Yeah. And I'm quite curious, to explore just one item that you learned from Milton Friedman that you find extreme.
So the I like the idea of choice, but I think he went. I thought it's a bit extreme in the sense that I think it's not. I don't think it's actually normal to expect that free markets can possibly be the solution for all the problems that we have in the world.
You never said that.
No, he actually says that, because whenever there are issues, he actually says if you want to try and address any situation, whether it's a labor issue
Economic
or it's
issue.
economic
You said
issue,
not all
Yeah.
the issues.
all economic issues,
all economic
it's-
issues.
it's the market.
Not all.
it's the market,
Yeah.
and I think that maybe the market, yes, has to be at the core, but there's also need for some sort of a structure.
Do you believe in choice?
Not absolutely.
For adults.
Yes, even for adults.
Okay, so why is choice limited? In what
Choice
in what area?
to the
in
extent
what manner
to the extent
is
that
choice limited?
the things that you choose might have an effect on maybe the enjoyment of freedom by the other person, then your choices have to be limited. It can't be a carte blanche or go all the way, do what you want. But having said that, I also found his idea. I don't know whether it's applicable today.
No, let's stick to one thing, because you still haven't explained. So when we say choice, there's obviously it's bounded choice in the sense that my choice should not harm you.
Should not impugn or impinge on your choice. Yeah.
Then obviously that's
That's an obvious caveat.
an
Yeah.
obvious
Yeah, but
let's
community,
stick to
but
the
community,
idea of choice
but communities are not created equally.
and cooperation.
Communities are not created equally. So if you just say everything is going to be driven, people should be free to make their choices of the market should be able to be the main
No,
determinant.
we're not talking about the market. Because remember,
But it's
there's
related.
Yeah. But then
It's related.
First is
So,
the philosophical argument of
around
choice.
the choice. Yes.
Should people have choice?
So people should have choice. People should be free to choose to the extent that their choices are not impugning others.
Yeah.
But also, even in an environment where people are free to choose, there must be some sort of a mechanism where we don't create a very self-centered, sort of selfish kind of society where it sort of excludes everyone that may not be able to participate into fully, express their own choice, because we are not equal.
Nobody talked about equality. Nobody talked about equity. Nobody talked about. I'm just saying that. Do you believe in the idea of people having choice?
But I've just explained.
Yeah,
It's
but
choice.
okay. You see,
the extent to which we choose what we
risk
want to do.
going down a rabbit hole, but seeing as we're celebrating your graduation, I think we can take certain
Maybe
liberties.
we should have taken that choice away from him.
But you see the problem. The problem with what I'm hearing from you that I have is that the moment you start speaking about higher causes that transcend individual choices, right? Then it immediately begs the question: then who decides then that this is actually better for the community,
and
or this is better for the society?
Rufaru, you're right.
Is the society.
You're not Rufaru, you're right. But before we even get to that higher decision making, it seems like he's got reservation on just purely choice. Kuti patiri panapa tikati tapiwa
Ita zawada.
not ita zawada.
Eh.
Tati yo tikapiwa choice. If there's a choice, there's mazoe, there's alcohol, there's water. Do you believe that as an individual you have the right to choose what you want? Because that philosophically, if you can capture that, and also if you think that there's a limitation, that there's actually something inherently bad in choice, because that will then lead us into a particular rabbit hole on then how should we then structure the total society. But at the end of the day, it's about choice. Do you believe? Because you know what the nitty-gritty
I don't believe in people having a carte blanche on choice. You can choose, but within
So you're saying
within certain limitations.
So what are those parameters? What are those limitations? There's mazoe, there's water, and there's alcohol. What are the limitations?
By the way, that's not the full universe of things that are available.
No, because we can increase it to infinity. You're a mathematician.
So
we can
you
increase the
it
number
to
of choice
infinity, right?
to infinity.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you're saying, so all those things that we have, you want to think about, okay, they are freely and they are available. I mean, the effort that is needed to produce them or to have them available is equal. If you're saying people can actually have equal access.
Nobody has talked about access. Nobody has talked about. I'm just saying, you walk into a supermarket.
But that's not practical, Tinashe.
No, because we're building. We're building a structure or a theory, and when we're building a theory, at least from the first basis, first principle, we should be able. You and I, in fact, the three of us, because I would like to believe that we've got the necessary IQ to agree that first principle, choice is good, and
without limitations,
with absolutely no limitation, up to the nth, up to infinity, choice is good as a first principle. At least if we agree, because most of our disagreements you tend to find are on first principle. So the first principle.
So on first principle, I'm on board.
You're on board.
Choice is good,
right?
So that's fantastic.
So then that's fantastic.
No. But it does. No, that's not the whole picture, right?
Yeah. Then we have a bounded reality where we say, okay, if choice is the first principle that we go with, and everybody must have the choice, must be able to choose, and they must be able to carry through whatever choice that they have.
Within the constraints, whether it's of the society or the community.
Before we even get to society, the only constraint that we can almost all of us agree is that it does not impinge on another's rights. So as long as I'm not taking your liberty or your property, right, then I have the right to choose whatever I want and however I want it.
He's not comfortable with that idea. His body language.
Most people. So, you see, when we have these disagreements, what I tend to find is that most people, we actually don't agree on the first principle. Because I think later on, you and I can very much agree that, if it's a household or if it's a community and it's through cooperation or it's with a company, then we have to abide by certain rules. So even though I want to have certain choices, but if the company says these are the choices that you are governed by and you're quite happy to sign on, then yes, I'm giving away part of my right to choose, which is perfectly fine. I think that's society. But usually the disagreement is around choice. Should people have the right to choose? Because then that's how you get paternalistic ideas and ideals that actually I know better.
Yes. So, if we let people choose, they're going to make dumb choices.
Yes.
And society will be worse off. So we must make certain choices.
Exactly. And there are certain clever people with extremely superior morals that must choose for us.
But
I
don't
think
you
the
believe
father of that philosophically is Hegel.
But don't you believe that there are certain views that a particular community shares, whose views are pervasive to a point that pretty much everyone, it's conventional wisdom to everyone in terms of what parts have to be followed in that sort of community.
Oh, no, fantastic.
So it's not like there's one person that is imposing it, but these are like, so you would not expect the universe of choices to be sort of unlimited. So I'll say it's community has got its own understanding of what that choice has to be.
So Ranga, how it works is the minute we understand the first principle, what then happens is then the second principle should be the minute we have a group of people, and the idea of choice means it has to be voluntary association, voluntary cooperation. And voluntary cooperation means I still have the right
to exit.
You can't take away that right, because the minute you take away that right, it means you're violating the first principle of choice. So whatever society you create, however you create it, there must be the right that I have the right to cooperate, and I have also the same right to disengage. If at any point in time I feel the right to disengage, just like when you walk into a supermarket, you have the very right to buy an Apple phone. But it doesn't mean that tomorrow you want the same Apple, right? You have the right to change your mind. As long as you agree with the first principle, then you have the right to even change your mind the very next second. See, that's why the market system is probably the most efficient way of allocating resources, because it actually agrees and does not violate the first principle, because it actually says that, at any point in time, you can change your mind. Today you're drinking whatever you're drinking. I mean, how many of you actually drank like the last year? Maybe more than
a ton.
Yeah,
but
just the variety of
Tinashe,
whiskey you've had.
But Tinashe, my question will be: so, is there any example of a country or a society in modern history or in antiquity where that
has worked? I think we've talked about this.
So I want to address. Can I get? But
please go ahead.
So they're abstract ideals or ideas, right? Like, so for example, maybe in mathematics, there's the idea of the circle, right? And in the real world, there are many things that are circular, right? But they you probably won't find a perfect circle, right? And I think so. When we take these economic abstractions into the real world, right? You're never going to find an example of a perfect free market anyway, right? Just like it's opposite, socialism, communism. You're never going to find a perfect socialist communist society, right? But in the real world, you'll find societies exist on a spectrum. So there's some that are you much closer to free market ideals, and then there's some that you much closer to socialist or communist ideals. And then we can now start making comparisons, right? To say, okay, there was West Germany and East Germany. The West Germans, they weren't completely free market society, but they leaned much more free market than their neighbors in the East. And these are exactly the same people, ethnically, historically. The only difference was an arbitrary line between
South and North Korea,
between East and West. And we know what the economic outcomes were of those different peoples and those different societies, and who had a better quality of life, and who had to build a wall to keep people in.
My intervention is actually a very simple and straightforward, and especially as far as economics is concerned, and not the greater society, is that the free market is not talking about equilibrium prices and abstract concept. The free market is talking about free choice. It's talking about the first principle, that you are free to make your choice. That if you're free to make your choice, then in a marketplace, it doesn't talk about equilibrium price. If people are free to make their choice and we put them in a marketplace, and a marketplace is not what you read in economic books that, where you have 10 items that, okay, this is the market. A market is purely where a buyer and a seller transact. So the first principle is free choice. The second principle is the ability to transact and to effect transactions. It's not a particular domain. It's not a particular idea. It's literally, if I have free choice and I have the ability to transact, that's the free market. That's simple and straightforward.
Well, so I think what I'm gathering from both your submissions is that
starting to sound like a lawyer.
Well, that's why we sent it to school.
is that this whole thing about choice, about free market, I think they are all abstract. There is no, because I think even Rufaro struggled to really pinpoint an example of a, maybe not purely free market sort of economy, but even 70%. Okay, and what you're talking about, the aspect of there is a market and people having being free to choose. It's not something that you can say there's a society or community where that is so widespread on so many things. You might actually find that in certain communities, they might allow free markets in certain product or services. But there are areas where maybe there is a higher authority, for example, the state that just says, okay, for example, it's broadcasting or etc. We are issuing 3 licenses. It's like you'd give an example of telecoms where
we're going to get into it.
There are 3 licenses that have been issued. In a way, you could say, yes, I can choose to use Econet, Teleso, and Net1. But the fact that the universe of your choices is actually limited by this mechanism of a license, it just tells you that you can never have that free market. It sounds very interesting as an ideal, but I I think even if there's one actually
So
video
you know what, Rufaro?
where even Milton
Ranga-
Friedman himself failed to actually give an example of a typical free market economy.
No, I can give you those examples, but I think that Ranga, the caution that I have for you is when you pick up a book, do not go to the last chapter, to the conclusions, and miss the entire prelude and the entire book. And what you're trying to do is you want to box us and force us into give you an example, right? And Rufaro actually did a fantastic job
Of not giving us an example.
No, of using an abstract concept of how you understanding a circle and the abstraction of a circle helps you in many numerous ways. That actually just understanding it is good enough. But he's giving you a conclusion. And the problem is, once you get to the conclusion and you don't understand the entire book, it's just going to be very difficult. I think the lesson today, I don't want to get into the conclusion. The lesson is, let's go into a rabbit hole and let's continue studying and reading about the first principle of choice. And let's go deep into understanding what choice and what free choice really means. Because once we understand what free choice means, once we understand what markets means, once we understand rights, your indubitable rights that you have as a person, because once you say free market, once you say free choice, and once you say there's a marketplace, and like I say, just understanding that a marketplace is not thousands of people. 2 people transacting, as far as economics is concerned, that is a market. And it does not mean it's $1 that's transacting or $1 billion that's transacting. The billion that's transacting has no superior claim to the $1 that's transacting. It's all a market. And then the issues of equilibrium price, because I think that's the problem that the market clearing price or the equilibrium price. That is only, if you understand the abstraction that Rufaro is talking about, then you understand that equilibrium price is only true for that particular second. And the very next second, because people have the right to change their choices, then equilibrium price does not hold.
So if you look at these big free markets, like the currency markets globally, not here, or equity markets that trade continuously, the price it's always a squiggly line. It's never,
exactly.
It's never consistent for any meaningful period of time. It's just literally every second, the price changes somehow.
And up until we have that understanding, then we can get into societies where this has happened.
You have it. They can't give you the societies where they
We'll get into it. We'll get into it.
What I can tell you is
the
most successful societies
at that point, I'll rest my
economically, right? If you look at the most successful societies economically, and you were to measure how free their markets are, you would find that on the spectrum, they are much more closer to free market than the societies that haven't been so free. I don't know whether you guys came across the Draghi report, which came out earlier this week. And this is Mario Draghi. He was the former governor of the European Central Bank and Prime Minister of Italy. And he was basically commissioned to do an economic study of the EU, because since the global financial crisis, 2007, 2008, the EU's share of global GDP has almost halved, right? At the time of the global financial crisis, the US and the EU's economies were more or less the same size. But today, the US economy is about double the size of the EU economy. So, and obviously, this has captured the attention of senior politicians in Europe, and they're concerned about.
He's allowed to celebrate too.
Yes, and they're concerned about so why is the EU lagging, right? And one of the things that one of the major points that he makes in his presentation is that the EU's growth has been slower because their markets are less free. There's just too much regulation.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting real world take of whether.
Well, it goes even further when it looks
okay.
At the UK.
So how does that sit I mean, if you're making the argument that having free choice limits economic growth, how do you explain the
Removing
growth?
free choice.
Okay.
Or limiting free choice.
Okay. How do you then explain the massive growth in the Chinese economy?
Because they've actually been increasing choice. What China has been doing is, when you look at 1949 China and you look at today, the number of choices has actually increased. That's the massive growth. That's the difference. Whereas
so you're saying
EU,
compared to
1949,
China,
50 year, 70,
Look at Mao's era.
China is now
Much more free.
than the
no,
EU.
it's getting freer than the EU as far as economic regulation is concerned.
Okay.
And I think that's a very good
It's a
way
great
for
example.
us to just segue into Starlink is in Zimbabwe.
Free choice.
Well, do you believe in it?
In what? Is Starlink or what?
For free choice.
Or free choice? You know, because that then determines whether or not we should have Starlink in Zimbabwe.
I'm saying people are free to choose, but we have to acknowledge that there could be constraints to that ability to choose. It's not like 100% free. I think there are bound to be some limitations depending on the
So let's use Starlink as an example. Should Starlink, from a theoretical from an abstract concept, should Starlink be allowed to come into Zimbabwe?
Not just Starlink, Starlink and in other a provider of technology.
Why?
Because I mean, it's good for the economy.
Why?
We want to have access to faster, cheaper services.
We do have.
Is it the fastest and the cheapest that you can ever get?
But
and also access.
But I would like regulation. I thought the first thing that you would say
Also access.
is that Econet paid $137.5 million for a 20-year license to provide data. And I haven't seen any indication that
Starlink is paying half a million.
that we're getting a check anywhere near that size from Starlink. I thought that's what you know.
No,
that
but
there should
look,
be everybody should should abide by the same rules.
So the technology sector is always evolving, gentlemen. I think even when mobile telephone came, they also came in at the launch for the fixed line providers. And I think then even the fixed line took a big chunk of business from the post office of the postal services at the time. So I believe the whatever innovations that are coming today, they are coming because they are necessary. And they can only nudge the existing players into more innovation.
On the list of licenses that you must pay for, there is mobile telephony. If you say you want mobile telephony, you pay 137 million. But if you say you want to provide a satellite service, you pay $500,000. This was before Starlink. This was that justified?
At the time, maybe. Because
on what basis? Not at the time. This was before Starlink. Before Starlink, it's very clear. If you want to provide satellite services, you pay $500,000. If it's mobile telephony, you pay 137 million.
Tinashe, you still have to go to that evolution of telecommunication that I was talking about. So you're moving from postal to fixed to mobile. Do you know, I think for the first 10 years of mobile operators operating in Zim, almost 70-80%, if not 90% of the revenue was coming from voice. So at that time, I suppose when the licenses were being set, voice was the thing. I remember, because I sort of experienced it over the years as an analyst, the progression in terms of the significance of data in the mobile network operators over the years. There was a time when they were saying we have introduced, I think the very first time it was GPRS, right? I think it was GPRS.
Yeah, GPRS. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what it was.
yeah, that was the probably one of the first entry of mobile broadband that came, technology that came at the time, and it wasn't a big thing. I think things started to really make sense when they introduced 3G, and then traffic started moving towards data, and also the usage was increasing and things like that. So I think at that initial point, it made sense because voice was the driver of revenue, was the driver, even the investments that these mobile network operators were making.
I'm still trying to understand how you justify a license fees of 137 million.
I don't know about justifying.
So Rufaro, because I think Rufaro actually was right on the money when he gave us an example of the circle and it from a theoretical and abstract manner, why it's then very useful for us in society. Oh. And I want you to tackle this from this perspective. What if Econet never paid a license from day one, or there was a token license? How far would have Econet and Net1 and Tel1 gone? Would they have done
I don't think the other two have paid as much.
No, this is not for you. This is for because I want now Rufaro to take his theory into practice. What if from day one government had said, "Oh, you guys actually want to provide a service? Mm-hmm. Fantastic. This is greater choice for our people. Mm-hmm. This is there are limitations to bandwidth and whatever." And whatever happens in the technological sector, we are limited to 3 or 4 or 5. Mm-hmm. But all we want is if you can make the investment, there's no fee. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Yep.
Full blown. Do you think that the issue of 137 million or whatever would have arose? And why did they have to pay expensive fees? Was it even necessary? Especially from your abstract, from a free market. How would a free market economics handle the case of our telecoms sector?
Yeah, so I would certainly, I think a jurisdiction where there were no such licensing fees would see much more investment in that space and would be much better off than a jurisdiction that has these very steep fees. Fees are like a regulation, are a lot like regulations in terms of their impact. They just make it harder to do things for entrepreneurs, and so places where it's harder to build businesses generally don't do it as well as places where it's easier to do business.
So we're saying that, or you're saying, and then I want you to look at it again. Mm-hmm. We want to go with the first principle, mm-hmm. and see how far we go with the first principle. That if it was a free market, mm-hmm. then we would have seen entry and exit, mm-hmm. without fees as a barrier. Anyone could have come in,
absolutely,
or with minimum investment, anyone could have come in and could have gone out.
Yep.
And anyone who would have invested would not feel hard done by if 3-4 decades later it turns out that they're the only ones that have been paying and the other guys have not been paying. That actually it wasn't a level playing field.
Yep.
That somebody was being punished for actually being successful. Mm-hmm. Right? So free choice would have just allowed people to come. It would have been any sector. It doesn't matter how it's evolving and what the sector is. It should have just been, you know what, you're creating employment, you're creating the necessary investment that we actually need in our country. If you're doing that, kudos.
Yes,
and
exactly.
we're not going to punish you.
It's a fantastic infrastructure, which is a great lubricant for everybody else doing business in your country.
We're actually not going to punish you. So coming back to you, and it's very simple and straightforward. Why should Starlink actually pay license fees of $500,000? If indeed we believe in the free market, in free choice. Maybe we still don't believe in free markets, but we believe in free choice. And we believe in the greater the choice is for our individuals in society, the better it is, the better that society is. Why should Starlink be paying? Okay, we made a mistake in charging Econet 137 million, which is ridiculous. Because for a company to actually recoup that, then it means that their fees have to be extremely high. Because remember what they paid, it was actually US dollars. Remember, this was in 2014, it was real US dollars. Now they have to recoup that. It's literally impossible, especially in a country like Zim. So if we think about it, have we learnt our lesson? Should we do away with fees and anyone who wants to come in, we should be able to say, you know what, come in, as long as you're not harming the next individual. We're still on first principle. What are your thoughts on that?
So I believe there is so I'm not yet at the extreme of your free choice argument where you're saying economic players have to be given total freedom to do as they please. There's need for some sort of an oversight, but the oversight doesn't have to be heavy-handed. So if there's going to be fees, these are not fees that are meant to be a deterrent. Maybe they are fees meant to partly fund whatever agents that you are creating.
Why are you paying fees?
No.
Have you seen Portra's officers? Like everyone, Net One is suffering, Tel One is suffering, Econet is suffering, but guess who's building a lovely office?
maybe they're just very good at whatever they're collecting. They use it wisely. Look,
Ranga, please.
I'm totally.
Please articulate. Please articulate your case.
It's not a courtroom for analysts. For an analyst.
Okay, yeah. For this side of the aisle, we believe that there should be no fees at all. There should be some sort of regulation.
I believe,
but regulation has got nothing to do with fees.
I believe there must be regulation, and the cost of that regulation has to be covered partly by the players in the form of the fees. What I don't agree with is...
Well, they still pay VAT? They still pay...
No. So they're paying VAT, but there must be a payment towards, the...
Okay, how much should it be? 137 million?
I don't know. Certainly not 137 million.
So how much?
Because,
half a million?
Maybe.
Half a million?
Maybe.
You're an analyst.
Well, I mean, 500,000 from 137 million, that's like tremendous saving on their part. But look, I believe that maybe we need to have more players coming on board. I believe that to the extent that it's necessary to have them regulated, let's have regulation that is not restrictive, regulation that allows more and more. It's possible to have a regulator, but still being able to admit more and more players, and they're paying a fee amount. I'm not a big fan of the fees, by the way, because I'm a payer of fees, of regulated fees in certain aspects, where probably I feel that maybe things could have been better with a much lower fee. So certainly, on that bit, I'm with you that maybe the early adopters were had it, but I mean that's how it. I can just give you some very basic anecdote. Where today, like I realized that when I
we don't like anecdotes.
No, I think he's made the case that he's actually not making a case. So, but I like that. I like his dedication. That playing the devil's advocate.
No,
and we welcome it.
Yeah.
Let's hear the devil's advocate. Let's hear that argument.
No, so my argument is probably it was more like pretty much you have a situation where maybe the price that you paid for something like 5 years ago was probably much higher than what you are paying for today. For one reason or another, one of them could be technology and etc. For example, a simple thing like a solar installation for a 5 kVA, maybe 5-10 years ago, you would have paid something like $5,000-10,000 bucks. Probably right now, it's just 2,000. I get it. I get it also that that definitely someone like Econet not only did they overpay, but it was unfair that the other players at the time were not squeezed to pay as much. So obviously that is unfair. Whether you are in a free market society or in an free market, as it were, but you can't have two players, one being with a different bar of regulation.
I think it's because the hurdle was actually unnecessary. But I want you again to get into the philosophy around this, because I think this is a very useful debate and something that we need to really propagate in our greater society, because I think we'll get there. That you're someone like Econet who's paying 137 million, but they're still paying their VAT. They're still paying all the other costs and taxes that any other business pays. But I don't see a mining company that's paying 137 million. I don't see Delta paying 137 million. I don't see anyone paying cost of admission fee to actually come into Zimbabwe and play the game. I don't see anyone doing that. Why are we disadvantaging people in the telco sector? I don't see anyone. I mean, Zida, perhaps they can help us. Even Starlink coming into Zimbabwe. Why should they pay $500,000? I don't see anyone else. I mean, when you started your business, you pay $500,000. Why are you paying $500,000 just to get the right of admission to actually come and play? Why are you paying $500,000?
Yeah, so I think we as a country are very heavy on regulation and this idea of funding that regulation with these fees, and I don't think it served us well. I think so, and we've had this conversation before here where we ask, why didn't we have 10 more entrepreneurs like Strive and Zed, right? And I think part of the reason is we live in this highly regulated environment in which it's difficult to start and build a great business. And it's this growth and prosperity that we're just not experiencing because it's just harder to create wealth.
Because of regulation. Absolutely. But it's not just the regulation, it's the rights of admission that are just astronomical. I mean, it's ridiculous.
It's sky high. So and I think so.
But why do we have, maybe Ranga, you might help us here. Why do we have certain rules for the telco sector, but mining companies don't need to pay $500,000 just to have the right to operate in Zimbabwe? So why should Starlink pay $500,000?
Well, very, very, very something that I had not thought of. But obviously, I don't think it's just in telcos where you are seeing this sort of heavy-handed
extortionism.
Yeah, maybe a regulation.
It's extortionist.
Yeah, because I mean, when the more and more we are discussing this 137 million that was paid by Econet, the more you really feel that they.
It was unnecessary.
They were punished for being successful.
It was.
That's essentially it. And if you're trying to invite business, why would you punish? Anyway, let's go on. The next thing that I want you guys to
I doubt there's anyone who has paid as much.
No, per capita, no. And then you have change of currency. So they paid in US dollars, but they're getting revenue in Zim dollar. Like, how ridiculous is that? But anyway, gentlemen, what's the impact of Starlink in Zimbabwe? Do you think it's a game changer? And maybe let's start with you, Rufaro. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I think it's been a game changer. I think there's no question that it has brought down the cost of bandwidth. We've seen everybody in that space basically reduce their prices. So it's definitely a game changer. And I think the biggest winner is the consumer. Because communication is a core part of doing business, whatever business you're in, right? And access to information is important. So it's definitely reduced the cost of doing business for most people. I think it's fantastic. It's a great accelerant of.
Well, let's look at the numbers. And Ranga, this is for you. When you look at mobile internet subscriptions, it's about 11.3 million subscribers. VSAT, it's about 5,600. Active fiber subscriptions, it's about 77,000. When you look at those numbers, clearly a lot of Zimbabweans use the mobile to access internet, and they're obviously on limited budget. How far will Starlink be a game changer? Where you're paying $200 or $300 for setup costs, and then after that you're paying 50 to 30 to 50 as for unlimited data. But from the numbers, it looks like if you really push it, maybe 200,000 people, and these 200,000, the ones that are actually on unlimited or can potentially pay $30 or more
a month. Yeah, they're not too many.
Maybe 100,000 at most.
Yeah, so I think the Starlink excitement is actually more on social media, than on reality because of the cost of setting it up. So $200, because if you look right now, some service providers are probably much cheaper to set up, and the cost also is fairly competitive. Yeah. Where Starlink is going to be game changing is in areas that were previously not covered by
rural schools,
exactly.
Hospitals,
those places. So there's a case to be made for those places to be,
or even small businesses. I think it could make a
so the statistics that you're showing us, when you're looking at the business side or business end of data usage, where you've got your VSAT, you've got the fiber and etc., especially for the medium to the upper, to the bigger businesses, that's not going to be affected by Starlink in a way, because I think even the way it's set up, I doubt it will be, it can power sort of a network of a bigger organization. But for the smaller SME type, in places where previously they were not covered, those ones will actually move to Starlink. So I don't think it's going to be such a disruption to the current setup, because the 10 million will still be there as subscribers as long as they've got a line, and it's not like you're gonna be moving around with a Starlink.
So, well, that's the point I was going to raise with Ruparo.
It's not going to be
how far are we from Starlink mobile telephony?
That will be game changing.
So we're there already. So there's already the satellites in orbit that have the capability of direct to cell. So it's happening. It's there, and its coverage and its capacity is only going to increase over time. I think maybe not all the hit smartphones. The hardware side is ready at this juncture, but I think it's going to become a reality. But from what I've seen from the announcements in the developed world, they're going to partner the mobile telephone companies on that particular piece of product. So they're going to complement the mobile networks.
So you follow this more than we do, or certainly more than I do, and I want to hear your view. Starlink, when you look at global subscribers, they haven't really moved the needle.
So I'll say yes and no. I think I think the current factory capacity is about 1 million devices a year, and they are working on wrapping that up. So I think there's a constraint in terms of just literally their capacity to supply the market.
So
I think the demand is certainly there. They're selling every unit that they manufacture. So they literally can't keep up with demand. So it remains to be seen.
I mean, if you look at mobile telephony, global usage, or somebody who actually has a mobile phone, you're looking at billions.
Yep.
And yet Starlink right now, I think they've gone as far as I think they're not even past the 10 million mark.
No, they're not past 10 million. I think they're about.
So is Zimbabwe actually an early adopter? of this technology?
I don't think
I think it is, and it's partly because of our situation where data generally was expensive, but also that issue of accessibility. So if you are a business and you are running a branch somewhere there in Chichipinge or Mzarabani, where there is no fiber connection and maybe other connections, and maybe you are just relying on VSAT and other, Starlink would be an opportunity for you to be able to do that. And obviously, even for some weekend farmers, like what Faro wants to say, you can even invest in putting one at your farm.
Okay.
Because ordinarily it's a remote area.
your farm has to be productive first.
So is it something that we can give kudos to the government of Zimbabwe? Because they're having problems with in South Africa it hasn't happened. Half of Africa it hasn't happened, primarily because governments again do not believe in free choice.
No, on this one they got it right. At the end of the day, it's going to benefit everyone. I think even the mobile network operators also benefit, because I don't see why Econet or Tel1 on Net1 would still pay 137 million or anything closer to that, because voice is as good as dead, right? So the big game is going to be data, and there's a player who is paying half a million. So what would that mean to these MNOs if their license fees per year?
And it's due in it was 20 years.
Yeah,
right?
so
it was 20 years, so 2033.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or 34.
34, yeah.
And unfortunately, I doubt there is any refunds or something like that. It's sadly, but I think going forward, look. When data came into the market, the mobile network operators were not really excited about the data in itself. I remember they would talk more about what they're calling overlay services. So they're saying we are providing infrastructure. For us to really benefit from it, we should be able to provide services. I think that's why you find, some of them try to go into whether video on demand or something like that, services that uses the data, because that's where probably they thought the money is going to be. So in terms of how those businesses should transition, I would say they need to look for going into spaces where they could charge for the usage of data. I mean, the services that requires.
I think I tend to agree with you. I think that anything that improves the ecosystem, anything that increases choice, is not only good for the consumer, it's good for government, and it's good for the players,
for the operators,
operators as well.
But look, we should expect some carnage, obviously, some job losses, definitely. Why? Because it means, the transition in the.
But the net effect is you're actually creating new jobs. Because with satellite and becoming more ubiquitous, especially in your farm, because your farm is actually going to be more efficient, or one hopes that now you have all touch wood. Hospitals.
This guy doesn't. It's very basic, Rufaro. So I install the Starlink on my farm. I can put some cameras there, and I could be viewing stuff from here, and I could be communicating with my manager, and maybe deploy even technology for
drone technology.
Drone technology. More able to monitor. It sounds very futuristic, but it's actually it's happening already.
Do you watch this guy's show? Jeremy Clarkson used to he used to present Top Gear.
Yeah, it's now on Amazon Prime. Yeah, but anyway, say your story.
No. I was just saying
you'll be able to watch.
No. Not that you'll be able to watch. not that you'll be able to watch. Clarkson's farm, but that Clarkson's farm is actually an example of what you're saying in terms of deploying all this, because he's literally running hectares or farmland, and it's just 2 of them.
Absolutely.
We should
There's
be
a
able
lot
to
more.
do that as
So we
well.
should be able to. So that's
Yeah.
the leapfrogging and the fourth industrial revolution that could potentially help us. So great. In other news, Cremora leaving the country. Nestle abandoning Zim. We saw numerous businesses, especially this entire year, especially the multinationals.
Nestle.
Yeah, leaving the country. What are your thoughts? What does it speak to? I mean, we saw Zida coming out and trying to do a study on, to probe why investors are exiting them. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think, sadly, we're not living up to the ideals of being a country that's open for business. I think for me, the first tell that really captured my imagination and made me realize that, something is off is when Stan Chart and Barclays exited, right? Mm-hmm. Because they've been in the country for more than 100 years, both of them. And they're bankers, right? So they've got a very keen macroeconomic sense for things. And one of the, and what struck me about Stan Chart's exit in particular is just next door in Zambia, right? Mm-hmm. They're not only increasing their footprint, right? The branches, the Stan Chart branches in Zambia open at 8 in the morning, close at 8 p.m. on weekdays. They open on Saturday and Sunday. By the time they exited Zimbabwe, they only had 2 branches, one in Harare, one in Bulawayo. So it really speaks to our environment not being great for doing business. And I think the 3 of us, to the extent that we are involved in business here, can have experienced it firsthand. And I think a lot of people in the audience have experienced it firsthand, that it's really tough to do business in Zimbabwe.
Okay, a very good one. Capital markets, and Ranga, you're the expert here. Please tell us, look at the foreigners coming into Zim, and compared to now, what are you seeing? What are the trends? Is it true that investors are leaving Zim?
Yeah. So Zim has always enjoyed foreign support for the longest time. Even in some of our worst years, 2008, there will still be foreign buying that was taking place on our capital markets, because foreign portfolio flows are very mobile. So whatever narrative that they're actually a very good barometer of the thinking in the capital markets or international markets around investing in a country. Mm-hmm. So before you start expecting someone to bring in millions of dollars to set up a factory, you are most likely to experience an inflow of funds onto your capital markets because of the ease with which one can bring in money and take it out. So Zim has always been that market where in Southern Africa, where funds could actually come in. And that what made it easier then, amongst other issues, was was Old Mutual. So foreign investors, fungibility. Someone who just buy Old Mutual from the London Stock Exchange, comes over here, you raise local money, then you start investing. And if you want to take your money, then you do the reverse transaction. So that was facilitating the inflow and outflow of our portfolio flows over the years. And the numbers, even around 2007, 2008, about 30-40% of our trades were foreign, And it's a number that actually increased. The statistic that I've shared with you there, the peak that we achieved was in 2014, where foreign buys were about 63. So 63% of purchases, yes, on our market was foreign money.
And where is it now? 10 years later?
10 years later, it's 5%.
Yeah, and to contextualize that, when you talk about 5% today, the volumes today are significantly lower
yes.
than they were in 2014.
2014.
Perhaps we're, compared to 2014 in real terms, we're probably doing less than 20%.
So you're saying
of the volume.
10 years ago, 63% of the trades in dollars were foreign buyers.
Yes.
And this is now reduced to 5%.
To 5%.
And the volumes are even much
Smaller.
lower.
Yeah.
Because then at average daily...
This should send alarm bells. I mean, this is really shocking.
Yeah, average turnover then was about 1.5 million a day, USD. Right now, we'll celebrate if we have got...
That much in a month.
You see? So maybe not in a month, but yeah. I mean, that's...
Yeah.
It's bad.
Okay, so Eranga, what does this actually mean? Because these are investors who were investing on the ZSE and these were dollars, right? Why would they have a problem now? Are they giving us an indication of what the problem is in Zim?
Yeah, so when you started changing currencies, and especially around 2018, 2019, already most of these foreign investors who were intending to take money out of Zim were failing. So it's part of the legacy problems that we have. So the return prospects in the investment companies were not looking good, but there was also the threat when you are trying to ship out the funds. So and also the fact that maybe markets around us, they are offering something better than us in terms of the returns, and you can move in and out without any issues. So if you are seeing our portfolio flows this low, that's only 5% of your activity, then it just tells you that the thinking of international capital when it's looking into Zim, even hot money,
doesn't even
want to be in Zim.
So 2014, you've got 63% of the buys being foreigners, but by 2016, 72% of the sales were foreigners. Speaking to Ranga's issue on currencies, people.
The money's going to exit, and a lot of these guys had really awful experiences where, they got a dividend and they weren't able to repatriate it, or they sold, and they wanted to repatriate their principal, and that money just didn't move for months on end.
And these are things that we can't wish away.
No. I mean, this is, that guy sitting in Joburg or London or New York, allocating capital. These are some of the smartest people in the world, right? So you're not going to pull the wool over their eyes easily, right? Because they invest all over the world. They've had, so they compare the experience in Zimbabwe to the experience in Zambia and all these other markets that are of similar size, but it's easier to do business. Things are more predictable. I was actually having a conversation earlier, about perceptions. So somebody's thinking about allocating money to an opportunity, same size, Zimbabwe versus Zambia. They're just gonna, on perception, they're just gonna say, you know what, let's just pay more attention to
Zambia,
the opportunity over there, because the perception out there isn't great. And the challenge is, the greatest ambassadors, right? Ranga and I and everybody in the capital markets should really be jumping up and down and traveling to all these places, selling the country, saying, you know what, there's a huge opportunity.
And we were doing that. 2009, 2010, 2011, we were in Joburg, in London. Guys went to New York and we were selling. I remember we were making like a whole day of presentations. Guys listening, okay, these are the opportunities in Zimbabwe. If you do this, and would field very difficult questions of a political nature. And I mean, like, we're the first line of defense, as it were.
And you were telling people that things are not going to change.
No, we're telling people, things are going to be fantastic.
Exactly.
You're going to make a phenomenal return in Zim, right?
The
Now,
dollar
can
is
I
yet to
today, in good conscience,
Call someone and
somebody
say,
listen, that $10 million you're thinking about putting in Zambia, bring it here instead and buy.
Well, there we are, ladies and gentlemen. Please share your thoughts on free markets and what your understanding of free markets is. Is Starlink a game changer or it's not? Tell us about investors. I mean, these guys are in the capital markets and they clearly see a problem there. I think the stats are just bewildering if you think about it. Hey, 63% a decade ago, and it's now down to 5%.
5%.
We need to get something right, Governor. And I think it has to do with our currency. But anyway, we are going to enjoy some meat tonight and celebrate the entire weekend. Well done, Ranga.
Cheers to that. Huh?
Cheers.
Cheers to everybody back home. All right.